Welcome back to the YouTube channel Next in Line. Just a reminder, in this channel we teach people the things that we've learned and we pass on to the next people in line. And we also encourage you guys to teach what you know to the next people in line in your life. So today in this video we're going to be talking about stripping the bark off the shafts we've already cut and then filing down the little bumps that it gets in it. And then we're going to be talking about straightening the shafts and preparing it for the rest of how to make an arrow. So if you're watching this video, you've already dried your shafts and cut them, and you're ready for the next step. And that next step is going to be stripping the bark. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. And I just take a regular pocket knife, and I just make it so it's straight up and down, and then I just run it back and forth, and that just strips all the bark off. And it works really well. This is the best way that I know how to do it. So when you get the bark off of these shafts, there's going to be these little bumps where twigs used to shoot out from them. And so you're going to need to file those down. And what I do, so I just have a file from Harbor Freight, and this is about $4. It's pretty cheap. And everything I'm going to show you, you can get at Harbor Freight for pretty much under $10. So you're going to just take it to these little bumps. You're going to file them down, but something you have to be careful with is the edges on here. Once you get that bump sanded close to the shaft, these edges will start digging into your actual shaft. So you need to be really careful with that. And so the next part, once you get all the bark stripped off the shaft, we're going to be straightening it. And to do that, you just look down the shaft and you figure out where it's bowed, and then you heat that part up. And then when it's warmed, you're just going to bend it until it goes straight. You might have to do that a few times. So I've noticed that there's a bow right here in this one. And I'm just going to heat it up over this. I usually use Elements over a stove, and I think that works the best. When I'm doing this over the stove top, I turn the knob to about right there. This is warm enough now, so you're just going to look down the shaft and find where the crooks are. And I'll see if you can see that in the shot. But I've got one about right here, and one about here, one here, and they go pretty much all the way down. And so you're just going to heat it up, and I just like to rotate it till I know that it's hot. And then I grab a pair of gloves for this because it just helps you to grab it easier. Okay, and then once again you just work it with your thumbs. You'll be able to tell that it's a lot more flexible when it's heated than when it's cool. So what I'm about to tell you is called a barrel taper, and it's just how you taper down the shaft and also where you put your nock and your arrowhead. So when you look at your shaft, you might think that the nock should be on the big end and the arrowhead should be on the small end, but that's not actually what you want to do. You want your nock on the small end and your arrowhead on the big end, and the reason for that is because it's going to fly straighter if you do this, and it'll fly flatter. And it's going to allow this to have a little more flex in it. So you're going to go to about halfway, and I like to find kind of where it's balancing. And that's about where I consider my halfway, or where I start my barrel taper. And so you're going to take that, and you want this to be able to fit whatever arrowhead you're using. If you're using glue-on arrowheads, then you're going to want this fit that. On some of mine, I use just bullet casings because I'm using them to hunt grouse or small game, so I just want a blunt end. So I just shave them down to whatever size that is. But remember not to go smaller than 5/16 on your arrows. And so to do that, you do exactly what we did, stripping the bark. And you just take that bark down and you whittle it down until it's the size that you want it, until it has a nice taper up to the balancing point. So once you have your barrel taper done, we're going to go over sanding it. And so I always sand it, and I start out with 100 grit, and then I move into, I believe this is 240. So I move into 240, and then I move into 1200. So I just go over it, and I just go over the whole thing, and you don't have to push very hard, and you'll actually get better results if you don't push too hard. And so I just go over the whole thing, and then once I'm done using this, then I go to a little bit finer sandpaper. And then I move on to the finest sandpaper. And then you just do that until you get it until it's really smooth. So I'm making this arrow for grouse hunting. So I'm just gonna be putting on a bullet casing for this. And so I've whittled it down just to make sure that this bullet casing will fit. And that's on what originated as my big end. And then I'm gonna put the nock in the small end of the arrow, or the smallest diameter. If this video meets your expectations, remember to subscribe and like. In the next video, I'll be talking about how to cut an arrow nock and also how to attach an arrowhead. If you have any questions, write them in the comment section and I'll answer them. Also, comment on any videos you would like to see in the future.